Okay, welcome to this episode of Beer Chat. My guest today is Sofia Graf, and we're going to be discussing transphobia. I will say this: if you have headphones, I would use them.
Okay.
Sophia, if you do have headphones, I would use them because what will happen is we'll get a reverb effect.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'll just set that up right now.
Okay.
Okay, I think it should be working. Just say something.
Um.
Yeah,
Okay.
works.
All right. Cool. Okay, so I suppose the first question is, that I have is, and this is something that I've often asked transgender people,
Mm-hmm.
and that is, where is the line, and how far do we take it? Like, when is it simply like being a drag queen, which is essentially a sophisticated form of cross dressing, and when do
Mm-hmm.
you go into the realm of being transgender? Um,
uh, that's a very difficult question to start off with. But essentially, people who are drag queens, they don't really identify as female. So they won't come out as transgender, or they would say, "Hey, I'm transgender." They're just doing drag. And the line between drag and being transgender is kind of huge, uh, because drag is sort of like a persona you put on. I don't know if that makes sense.
yeah, like you come up with a character.
Exactly.
Okay, but here's where it gets a little murky. Like, you have somebody, I'm not sure if you know who this person is, Riley
hmm
Dennis,
Sure.
who
Yeah, I'm familiar with her.
has little to no interest in getting any of the surgeries, but yet
Okay, that's
still a
okay.
woman. But all he's doing is
hmm
putting on clothes. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I could do the same thing. Like, if I start wearing women's clothes,
hmm
am I trans? Is my question, or am I
No,
simply
no, no,
just
because it's not really like a choice. Because being transgender isn't really a choice you can take control of, and I've tried to, obviously, but it doesn't work like that. Choosing to transition is another thing. So one might say I'm trans, but one might not have the research or the money or the how could I put this, the abilities to have the surgery, but you're still trans. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
um,
So if somebody, I don't know, I'm just going to put this very bluntly, in a developing country or something like that, is transgender but doesn't have the means to undergo surgery or do this and that, that doesn't make them any less trans. That just it doesn't you don't have the abilities or the finance or whatever it is to undergo surgery. Then there's the issue of saying, if you do have those things, why don't you do it? Well, I can't really personally speak for Riley, but I mean, some people are completely fine with undergoing surgery, and some people aren't. There some people who are just they don't really feel the need, or it doesn't hurt them as much. For me, I have dysphoria, and it does hurt me a lot, and I will be undergoing surgery and stuff like that. But some people don't really feel the need to, and some people do. And that's where I sort of say, I don't know, that's sort of my take on it. But
well,
I can't really speak for every trans person. This is just like my opinion, you know.
well, I guess maybe I have a different opinion, and my
hmm
thought is, if you have no interest in going and getting the surgery done, and you have no interest in transitioning,
Sure.
then I'm sorry, you're you're a cross dresser. That might be
Uh,
mean, but
okay. I don't. Hmm. That's just a line where you're kind of
because
putting everyone who doesn't have the means to do that in a certain category of saying they're a cross dresser or something like that. So some people who might not have the means to undergo surgery aren't really
well,
cross dressers. They just don't have the means. And if you do have the means, then again, being transgender isn't a choice, but undergoing those surgeries are. So that's where I
That's
make
my
the
thing is,
distinction.
where's the line? Because it's all over the map. I've got one group of people saying that if I say I feel like I'm a woman, then I'm a woman, despite the fact that I'm not.
Well,
And
well,
then,
the thing is, uh, well, how I got diagnosed with being transgender was a really long road for me. And it was, I can just speak how I got diagnosed. Was just, I went to numerous therapists. Some were transphobic, some weren't. And at the end of like a 7-year period, I finally got that diagnostic. But in between that whole time, um, it didn't make me any less trans. And some people say, okay, you have to go through somebody validating you to be trans. And so a medical professional has to validate you. But some trans people don't really get that validation, or have transphobic people not give them that, I don't know, stamp of quote unquote approval. So it's just very hard to determine, I guess, who medically to say who's trans and who isn't.
well,
And if you're lucky, then you have somebody who understands the issue and does give you that stamp of approval.
okay, let's go to another. Let's go to 3 other trans things, and
Sure.
because I want to circle around to another point. There are 3 other trans that are gaining popularity. Some are silly. One's actually quite dangerous.
If you're
One
gonna
is,
mention Caitlyn Jenner,
no, that's gender.
Sure.
But no, while there is something dangerous in transgenderism, but I'll get into that in a minute. But there's trans ageism, where people think that if they feel like a 7-year-old boy, they can live as a 7-year-old boy, despite the fact that they're 65 and collecting Social Security.
Okay. I have no sort of idea on that matter, or I've heard of that, and I don't really know how that would work. Um, I don't know about trans ageism that much, but
Or it's
I
just
don't think it,
people.
I don't think you can sort of change your age or something like that, and
What
then put
about
it
your
on a car.
species? Because there's trans
My
speciesism now.
species.
Yeah,
Um,
there are
okay.
people that think they're cats.
Um.
Should we
Well.
allow people to live as a cat?
Well, I don't really know. Like being transgender isn't just associating as a male or a female. So there's like multiple genders. Um, but what
There's
qualifies
2.
as a gender? I wouldn't really say that, and we can get onto that in a minute when I ask you a couple of my questions.
All right.
But I guess I mean there's a you gotta understand that being transgender isn't just this whole like one sort of thing. Like there's a lot of transgender people that like you believe in, okay, there's only 2 genders, or there's only 2 sexes or something like that. So when you're part of the transgender community, in the transgender community, there's a lot of different views um, on what is transgender and what isn't. And I'm of the belief that there are multiple genders. So there's male, female, and then non-binary, and then anything else. But I can't really say or talk about somebody saying that they're a cat, or that they're an attack helicopter, and that comes up quite a bit. That to try and make fun of trans people, saying, "Hey, I'm an attack helicopter. Please use my pronouns. I don't know, whatever. I'm an attack helicopter," and that's just not the point we're trying to make. We aren't attack helicopters, and to be honest, right now it's a pretty shitty joke.
Well, here's the thing. This is why I like having conversations like this, because
Uh-huh.
I try to
Just
understand.
give me a second. I'll be back in like 2 seconds.
All right.
Sure, go ahead. Just had to speak with my stepmom.
Okay.
Mhm.
But I like to have these conversations with people, because I like to try to at least get where they're
Sure.
coming from. But
Mhm.
for me, science has dictated there's 2 genders. One's male,
No,
one's female. Yes, there are rare instances where
there's a difference between sex and gender. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Um, so sex basically is determined by your chromosomes, your gonads, your hormones, your internal reproductive anatomy, and genitalia too. So those things, and I think a couple other things. I'm not so sure, but those 5 things mainly determine your sex. And so your sex is determined by that. I'm sorry, but your gender doesn't have anything to do with your sex. So your gender is what you identify as, and your sex is basically chromosomes, gonads, hormones, internal and reproductive anatomy, and genitalia.
Well, from my standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I when people ask me to do these, you know, when they want the rest of the world to go outside and say there's 79 genders or 944 genders, this is
No,
where it
no.
ends.
Look,
You
look,
can have
look,
whatever you like, but when you
look,
ask me to say there's more than 2 genders, I'm like, no, I live in
look. There's this thing that people say. Okay, there's a majority of, let's say, people who identify as male or female, right?
okay.
And there certainly is. I'm not trying to deny that fact. Majority of people do say I'm either male or female. But then to say just because there's a minority of people who don't really identify as a part of that group, that they're invalidated because they're a minority, that's just something that I don't really see. You see what I'm trying to say?
Nobody's invalidating their opinions. It's impossible to invalidate an opinion. There are people that say the world's flat and their opinion is just as valid. It doesn't make it correct, though. You understand?
Yeah, but it isn't really an opinion. Like being transgender has been medically proven to be a thing. It's been scientifically proven, and I can give you research to that. So me saying that I identify as female isn't really an opinion that it's
But
true or it isn't true.
what I'm saying is you can be a male and identify as female. Fine. A female identifying as male. Fine. That's about where it ends.
Okay, that's your opinion, but there's definitely people that are non-binary and don't identify with either, and there's definitely another thing completely out of the gender, not talking about gender, is intersex people.
Yes, that's a medical condition,
and
but
and, and that's people who don't have the same sort of or just different sort of chromosomes, hormones, and internal reproductive anatomy. And for example, when I was growing up, my hormones weren't always aligned with sort of like male hormones. So I had more estrogen, and it sort of just swayed around. And the doctors didn't classify me as intersex because all they did was look at my genitalia and say, well, okay, that's a male. And a lot of that just doesn't get tested. And a lot of people just go through their lives without being intersex. And that's just important to know that they are these sort of people. And when you go to a doctor and they think that you're male just based off of your genitalia, then it's kind of wrong because you have all these other things that determine your sex.
well, yeah, but here's the thing with a lot of intersex people, when they hit puberty, the gender that corresponds with the genitalia wins.
No,
So,
that's
yeah,
not really true. No, sort of like when I hit puberty than most other sort of guys in my grade sort of went through, and it was sort of hell for me because I knew at the time I was going to go and see a therapist about me being transgender and stuff, and I didn't want to go through male puberty, and that's another issue. But my puberty ended up being, let's say, different than somebody who is I don't know, has their sex is male.
it's I can't speak for you personally,
Exactly, that's just
but
a
it's hell.
thing.
Yours was hell. Mine was hell. Puberty sucked. You're
uh,
awkward. Your voice cracks.
I can see. I get you. I see what you're trying to say. Yeah,
You
for
don't
me,
know
it
how
was
to.
just,
You don't know how to talk to the
it
opposite
was,
gender.
it was just completely hell because I was going through something that I didn't want to go through. So that's just like my point of why it was hell.
Okay, and I assume you don't believe in transableism either. Though these are people that want to, like, there's a woman who can walk, but she believes she was meant to be crippled. So she wants a surgeon to essentially move the L13 part of her spine and cripple her from the waist down.
Phew, it's the first time I'm hearing of this.
I
couldn't really say what my opinion is on transableism. But I don't know. That's something very serious that you're undergoing, and I don't think I don't know personally. Crippling yourself. I mean, the way you're describing it to me right now, because all I have is the information you're giving me on this matter.
There was another case where a transable person convinced her therapist to blind her with drain cleaner or drain unclogger, Drano basically, because she believed she was meant to be blind. My thing is
yeah, but the thing is, you see, you've just talked to me about transableism and transageism. I think you got to understand that a lot of trans people have different views on all of these views. Like that, we have different opinions. So some people might not agree with transableism or something like that. This is the first time I've heard of that. And to be honest, I don't really know what to say. I mean, it's just something that I would probably not consider myself transableism.
But what I'm saying is you know, you guys, you want. Basically, what I'm saying is I would consider trans age, trans species, transable to be people that need therapy because there's something wrong in their brain. My point is okay, I'll accept that a lot of you really do feel the way you do. Okay, fine. But when you guys say that none of you have any mental issues, that's delusional, because every group of people, from black lesbian Jews to fat atheist neckbeard beer drinkers, have mental issues.
Sure, that's something.
Any group of people does.
Humans, everyone. I mean, look, there are obviously trans people who have dysphoria, and that's the sort of the issue that I have. And there are some people who don't, and there's some people who go through depression. There's some people who have other mental issues. But being trans isn't necessarily a mental issue. So not every trans person has a mental issue. That's what I'm trying to. There's a complete distinction. So for example, I have dysphoria and I have depression, and that comes from I don't know. I don't think it's necessary to talk about this, but the depression comes from other things in my life, and it doesn't really have to do with me being transgender. So there's a difference there, and I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to say is there a difference between saying, okay, you're transgender, and because you're transgender, that's a mental illness. So you have a mental illness because you're transgender. No, depression and other things, those are mental illnesses. And if you have a mental illnesses and are transgender, that's a thing. But trying to say that because you're transgender, you have a mental illness, that's completely wrong, in my opinion.
And I'm saying that not all the time, but sometimes I think the transgenderism can be tied to a mental illness or a symptom of it.
I mean, look at it this way. I'm just going to give my opinion. You're trying to say that it can be tied to, and it very well can be tied to it, because let's say your parents don't accept you and they disown you, or you go through horrible therapy for a long period of time. For example, I did, where my therapist just said, "Screw you, you need a girlfriend," or just stuff like that, and just sort of. There's a term we use. It's called gatekeeping. So it's a psychologist who basically just who gatekeeps you and who doesn't believe what you're feeling is real, and that can and going through puberty, for example, that gave me a great deal of depression. Going through puberty, and it can be induced, or you can have moments where it gives you depression, because the people around you don't really take you seriously, or you lose friends or something like that. I mean, it'd be horrible to come out as transgender and then lose your best friend or something like that, and that can certainly cause depression. But being transgender itself isn't a mental illness. That's where I'm trying to make the distinction. That so that a lot of the times people who are going through transitioning or come out or try to come out do have depression or other mental illnesses assigned with it because of the experiences they had in their life. It's a completely different thing.
Alrighty. I suppose I want to ask one more question, then we'll get to your questions. I don't know how much of a sports lady you are, but
I used to play sports, but I don't anymore.
Okay. But there's an MMA fighter called Fallon Fox who is transgender. She was a guy, now a woman, and she fights in the women's division. And she beats the living piss out of her opponents. Like, I don't usually give trigger warnings, but if you watch these fights, they're literally sanctioned domestic abuse. So my question is, what about sports? Do they have to have? Do they identify as the birth gender? Because let's face it, you can't take away a male's advantage in a sporting event if they're trans. That it's impossible.
That's a very, 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 very difficult topic to talk about. But then again, I mean, it's just look. I mean, the way I think the Olympics does it right now is that you have to have a certain hormone level, either female or male. So if you're a trans guy and you want to compete in the Olympics in the male category, you have to have the sort of the hormones in the that would be considered male. But that's the way they. Well, that's
you can't change muscle mass. You can't change bone density. You can't change the fact that men are better.
Muscle, you can lose muscle, you can gain muscle, but the thing is, I used to play soccer quite competitively, and I could say that a lot of teams around me asked me to play for them in the women's team once I reached I don't know, a female hormone sort of level, but I choose not to because of the sort of stigma that comes with that, and people saying, "Oh, that's wrong" and stuff like that. So I mean, it's very, very difficult to determine should trans people be in sports, and my stance on it is yes, because basically there's a lot of genetic advantages. For example, there's I mean, Kenyans are known. For example, Kenyans, they're known for being very, very good long distance runners, and that's due to their upbringing and due to their genetics, and they're just genetically superior in certain fields, or what would you call them? I don't know, marathon runs and stuff like that. So should we deny Kenyans, for example, the right to take part in sports because they're quote unquote superior and keep winning in those fields of sport? And and sports should be competitive. It should be fun, and most importantly, I just think that I don't know. It's a very hard question to ask me.
Because, well, it's simply put that if you allow trans women to compete with women, that's the end of female sports. It's over. It's done.
Not really, but I mean,
they can't compete. Take Serena Williams, #1 ranked female tennis player in the world. She got the ever-loving snot beat out of her by like the 300th ranked male. It was 6-0 and 6-1. She got 1 point because of an
but that's a male. You see what I'm trying to say? That's not somebody who has undergone the transition. And a lot of people who do compete in the Olympics who are transgender, have you heard of them win? Not really.
Not allowed to compete.
Well, of course, the Olympics. There were, I think, 2016 in Rio. There were some transgender people competing on.
And I think they had to compete in their. I'll have to check. I don't know if that.
There's this great story about a trans guy. I think the Olympics channel on YouTube's recently posted that. and it's this trans guy who was formerly, I don't know what his name was formerly, but he competed before, and he was quite good, and he got his got a scholarship at Harvard actually, and was gonna go and compete in the women's category, and then he came out as trans, and now he's on the Harvard men's swimming team. And I don't know what's happening there, but he can certainly
I'll have to check it out.
compete in the men's team. Yeah.
But I do want to get to your question, so fire away.
Well, I mean, I've just talked with you for I don't know how long, but it was a long
About an
time,
hour.
and you seem
half an hour.
Half an hour. Okay, sure. And you don't really seem that hate-filled as in most of your videos. And my question is basically, in your videos, why approach something with that amount of, I don't know, negativity or just I don't know. I just watch your videos and I just see you sort of like quote unquote attacking people and making fun of them, and I'd rather you make fun of their argument than the person themselves. That's just my point.
I usually do make fun of their argument while I make fun of them.
Yeah, I mean that's completely your choice.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm talking to you. Okay, we're having an interactive conversation. When I make a video, it's a passive thing. There's no way for me to have a like if I was actually talking to Carmen Carrera, I wouldn't have acted the way I did in said video. But my point was, if we want to talk about that video, the reason I do go nuts is because what she's asking for is impossible.
Okay, and it's my second question that basically comes to that video is basically what you said there is that if you were about to undergo sex with somebody and you find out they're trans, then I don't know, it's over for you basically.
Okay.
For me, like if I just like to chime in on this before you answer your question, is just look, sex has to be consensual. That's the number one thing, right? Yeah. And if you say no, then no. That's the way it works. You're not going to be forced to have sex with somebody just because, oh, look, they're trans, you have to have sex with them. And sex is a consensual thing, and you have to agree to it. And that's just the whole point I'm trying to say. Trans people aren't forcing you to have sex with trans people. It's just that when you say, look, I won't have sex with this girl because she's trans, you're basically saying, look, I won't have sex with this girl because she isn't a real girl. And that's the issue I have with the point you're trying to make. You're trying to say that trans girls aren't real girls. That's just or women in this case. Yeah, that's just the issue I have with that statement.
Okay. Okay. When I basically when you know when you say no, of course they're not trying to. Well, they actually, in a weird way, they are trying to half-assed force us to have sex with them because basically they say now. Yes, they're not saying you have to.
Who's forcing you to have sex with people?
Because they're constantly calling us transphobes if I don't want to have sex with them.
Okay, look,
I'll be their friend.
Look.
I'll have dinner with them.
If ever in life,
I'm getting in the sack with them because they have the same fucking genitalia as I do.
If ever in life,
it does come down to that. Okay.
Well, for me, basically, I don't think that matters, because if you love somebody that much, you shouldn't just be focusing on sex. And love doesn't just have to do with sex. You see what I'm trying to say? And when you meet somebody that you love, if you, just this is my point. If you meet somebody that you love, I don't think you'd care if they're trans. If you meet somebody that you truly, truly love,
I couldn't fall in love with somebody that has a penis, and love usually comes after sex. There is no way. That's your guy.
Okay, look. You see what I'm trying to say? I'm a heterosexual female, and I'm only attracted to males. But having sex with a trans girl does not make you gay. That's just my point of view, and that's the way it is.
Well, my point of view, and the rest.
That's basically saying that I'm just a gay person, which I'm not. You see what I'm trying to say? That's the issue with
what
that.
I'm trying to say. Me, and I can't speak for every straight man, but I'm going to say 98% of us are not going to sleep with you because you have the same equipment as us.
Okay, look, but
and there's the barrier, that there's where reality comes crashing in. You can say you're a girl, you can say you're a straight girl, all you like, but at the end of the day, your dating life might be a little tough.
That's I don't know about that. Dating life comment. I don't know about that. That's just I don't know.
Well,
dating is different for everyone.
You said you're attracted to guys.
Yeah.
Okay, straight guys are off the table. Most of them.
Why? I mean,
because
if you look, this is the way I this is the way I see it. Okay, if somebody loves you and you love them back, I don't think that sex is the number one thing that you're going to look out for in a relationship. And if quite frankly, if that's all you're looking for in a relationship, that's kind of sad in my point of view.
Okay. I don't know how it's done in Germany. Here in America, usually you go on about 3 dates, and then at some point you screw at the third or the fourth date. Okay?
Sure.
You have not fallen in love with someone by the third or fourth date. That takes a while. You're not.
You don't have to. There's no custom. There's no custom. I don't think that in the U.S. after 3 dates you have to have sex or something like that. That's just not.
Well, there's no
not something.
For it, but typically that's.
I mean, if I would like to go on with that, I mean, there's always that issue when you tell somebody that you're trans when you're dating them or something like that, and
right away.
Yeah, sure. That's some people's sort of view on that, but some people feel like. You know, I don't know how to explain this to you, but if you want to get to know someone or learn to get to know someone, and you tell them you're trans, and then immediately they sort of have a different point of view on you if you didn't tell them. Do you see what I'm trying to say? And that's the sort of stigma that comes with saying that you're trans, and I think that's just awful.
Well, I'm going to have a different point of view on you because there's no way in heaven or hell the relationship is going to progress. Once I know you have the same equipment as I do, it's over.
That's your choice. That's a consensual.
We'll go to the bar.
I'll say it again. Sex has to be consensual, and nobody's going to force you to have sex with somebody.
Yet I get called a trans.
But there's a difference between saying, "Hey, look, I'm not going to date you because of your personality," than saying, "Hey, look, I'm not going to date you because you're trans." And that's where I don't think that's something that I would agree with.
Well, again, this is what reality head.
I don't know. For me, that sort of jumps in the same boat as saying, "Hey, look, I'm not going to date you or something because you're black or because you're white or something like that."
Well, those are all preferences, but these are generally big. Okay, let me ask you a question. You meet a guy at a bar. Okay, have some drink. Well, actually, no, wait. It's 18. It's Germany.
16.
Oh, 16. Oh, shit! Yeah. I should have been in Germany. Okay, so you're at a bar. You're having some drinks. You meet a guy, and you find out that they're a trans woman, and they still have a vagina. Would you continue to date that person?
Well, if they're a trans woman, I wouldn't date them because they're a woman, and I'm only attracted to guys.
Okay, but if it was biologically not a man, would you continue the relationship?
I would try and get to know them first, because sex isn't the first priority on when you start a relationship, because that's not what goes through my head.
For you, would that become an issue for you?
For me personally, no.
Okay.
Because I don't think that
it would be.
Because I don't think that your gender is defined by your genitalia. That's just the way I see it, and the way a lot of scientists do see it.
Well, again, for me and and again, 98% of straight males.
Yeah, you're saying that, but you're saying that you're not. No, you're speaking again about 98% of the straight males, but you're speaking for yourself. That's just what I'm trying to say. You're speaking for yourself. Like you're trying to come off as somebody who's speaking for 98% of males, but you're speaking for yourself.
I
And
have
if
never
I
heard
said,
of.
and if I said something like about the trans community, that's me saying that. And a lot of trans people might not agree with what I'm saying. You see what I'm trying to say?
Well,
You can't say that, hello, like I'm speaking for all guys, and what I'm saying is representative of what all guys are saying.
I'm not, but I have yet to hear any straight guy said, "Yeah, I could go for a tranny." Sorry for using tranny, but I have yet to hear that. There's and I have confronted I don't know how many SJWs, and none of them have said yes, I would do it. The only one I've ever heard of is Linkara.
There's a lot of different. I think there's a lot of relationships that I mean, personally, my friend circle, there's a lot of relationships that do occur where I guess guys date trans girls, and I don't think that trans people have to only love trans people. I mean, everybody should be allowed to love everyone, and if that's what somebody would want to do, then sure, go for it. And I don't think that saying that if you as a guy, if you would date a trans girl, that doesn't make you gay. That's just my point of view. And I'm just gonna say again, sex is consensual, and if you don't want to have sex with somebody, say no. That's the way it works, and that's the right you have. That's the right I have. That's the right everyone has.
And I'm saying,
And if
again, straight guys, we are hardwired this way. When we see the same genitalia, it's over. It's done. And yes, it does come down to that. Now, yes, if you got a bisexual guy, maybe he can help you out. But in truth,
look. Again, you're saying that straight males.
We don't want to suck dick.
Nobody's asking you to do that. Nobody said that, and
you're asking me to accept you as
No, I'm debating you on this. I'm debating you on this, and I'm not telling you go suck dick because again, consensual, and nobody's forcing you to suck dick. That would be very strange if somebody is forcing you to suck dick or have sex with somebody, because that's completely wrong.
If I say no, I don't want to date him. No, I don't want to I don't want to pursue a relationship with him. Again,
then it's okay. But there's a difference.
Okay,
but there's a difference between I don't want to pursue a relationship with somebody because of their personality or because of their character, or I don't want to pursue a relationship because solely they're trans. And
that's a big issue.
I would just look. If I was about to date somebody and they said, look, I don't agree with being transgender, and I'm completely opposed to transgender people. I think you're really nice, but I'm opposed to transgender people. I'm not going to go and sit down with him and argue with him on that. You see what I'm trying to say? I'm just going to say, look, okay, obviously we have different views, and it isn't going to work out. That's about it. But what I have an issue with is you saying that being in love with a trans girl makes you gay, or bisexual for that matter. That's what I have an issue with. You see what I'm trying to say?
And I'm telling you, you're not going to have the time to fall in love with someone. That doesn't happen overnight. The idea that people can see each other and instantly be in love with one another is Hollywood fairy tale bullshit.
Sure.
Once I see they could have a great personality, they could have a wonderful smile, and hell, maybe their feminization surgery went really well and they got a pretty face. Once I see a dick, I'm out.
Okay, well, the thing is, for me, like, okay,
of other straight males.
That's completely great for you, but I just honestly think that being in a relationship with someone doesn't have to solely just rest on if you can have sex with them. That's just my opinion on that matter.
Sex is a huge part of relationship.
It is for some people. It is for some people. It is.
Everyone.
Not for everyone.
Generally, if they stop having sex, the marriage or the relationship or the whatever is fucked. The only
if somebody in the relationship of 30 years or something like that, and it comes down, I don't know, let's say they lose the ability to have sex with somebody, you would just end the
That's why
relationship.
Viagra was invented. I mean,
Oh God. Yeah, that's just.
but yes,
I mean,
at some
I mean,
point, if you get into your later, but you're talking about old people. They're weird.
sure, okay. What? I mean, this is going all over the place. My point, I'm just trying to say, is that if you're a guy and you're about to start a relationship, or you're considering to start a relationship, or whatever, and you happen to date a trans girl, that doesn't make you gay. That's all I'm trying to say.
And I'm saying at some level, if you go all the way with her, you're at some level bisexual.
Okay, that's. I mean, we can
That's
debate
reality.
for 4 hours on that, and I don't know, but it's just for me, and the way I see it, and a lot of trans people see it, it doesn't make you gay at all. That's because if you're saying that it may if it makes you gay, you're basically saying, look, you're invalidating a trans girl and saying you're not a real girl, you're just a guy. Do you see what I'm trying to say? That's the issue I have with, because if you're saying that somebody's bisexual or gay for being in a relationship with a trans girl, then you're saying that they're a real girl. That's the issue I have with that.
Again, we could debate it, but yeah, I am saying that.
So you're saying that trans girls aren't real girls.
They can.
That's the issue you have with that.
Again, wish you may, wish you might. You will not be a girl tonight.
What?
You can. Here's the thing. At the end of the day,
okay,
I'll be. I can be nice and all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, it's cosmetic. No, we cannot make a man into a woman. It's impossible. We can.
Okay.
We can
look.
get
the thing is, like, you identify as male, and you know deep down that you're a male. I'm just gonna ask you that. Is that true?
Pretty sure, yes.
Okay, so now let's say you were put in the wrong body, and you were assigned female at birth, but you know deep down that you're male.
Okay.
And because you're male, and you identify as being male, if you had a relationship with a girl, that would make you straight, because you know that you're a male. That's my point.
If it was me,
and you were in the wrong body, for example, you were born.
Okay, I would either say that I'm a lesbian or I'm bisexual, because at that point I would have a vagina and fallopian.
Yeah, because yeah, but your genitals don't decide your sexual preferences.
No, they don't. Your hardwiring does.
And my hardwiring
says no penises.
Okay, then. Again,
95. I can speak for about 95% of straight males out there. Again, this is where reality, where it stops. Again, you can live your life whatever way you choose, and I wish you nothing but happiness and joy and love and all that other shit. But reality has rules to it. This is one of them.
That's the way you see it, and it isn't reality for me, because you can say that's reality, but for me, that isn't reality. Reality is the way I see it, and it's not really a matter of saying, look, this is reality and you're wrong. And then again, I'm just going back to the point where if you're ever going to go in a relationship with somebody and you don't want to have sex with them, then don't, because sex isn't the only important thing about having a relationship. It's based on so many other things.
No, what you have at that point, if you're not fucking, is you have a friendship. Okay. Yes, okay. It's a relationship.
No, that's just where I say that
romantic about it. I'm friends with guys. That doesn't make me gay, but I'm also not gonna fuck them.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, but for me, I don't get the number one thing. The number one thing on a relationship isn't, look, can we have sex? Because if that's what you're thinking the whole time, then damn, that's really shallow.
What do you think about when you?
I'm going to say they're attractive. I'm going
when you're going on dates.
Uh-huh.
What do you think about when you're going on a date? But somewhere in the back of your mind,
of course, yeah. But if they say, look, I'm not in the position to offer you this or to go to have sex with you, then I'm just not gonna immediately say, nope, sorry, we can't have a relationship. That's just the way I see it.
well then, what's your goal? Like what's
I mean, romance. I mean, it doesn't really have everything to do with sex. It's not the end. I don't know. Your quote unquote end goal is to have sex with somebody, and I just think that you can be romantic and do romantic things without having sex with somebody. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but usually those romantic things, like the picnic under the peach tree, lead into sex.
Sure. Okay, do that.
Anyway, you have any other questions?
I don't, not really, but I mean, my only other question that I think you answered both of them that I had was the why attack with hate and the issue of what we just talked about, the sex issue and the if you're gay or whatnot, or your opinion on if you have sex with a trans girl, you're gay. Those are my only two really big questions. But maybe, I don't know, another issue that I would like to maybe discuss with you, because a lot of people might have opposing opinions on this.
All right.
And it's at what age? I mean, for me, I see it this way. You can be trans at any age, but undergoing transition is another thing. And I wanted to ask you, where you sort of, I don't know, see that.
This was actually one of my questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. I basically say this. If you have a kid and they're legitimately trans and not just playing around, or again, if they're just gender dysphoric, a lot of them do outgrow it. But let's say you got a legit trans kid. I would say the following's fine. If they want to wear, if they're, let's just say we'll make up a boy. If he wants to wear dresses, fine. Wants to wear makeup, fine. Grow the hair long, fine. Wear nail polish, fine. What I have an issue with is A, hormone blockers, and this is medically relevant, but B, to actually transition, I say they got to be 18. We don't let kids get tattoos under 18. We don't let them vote. We don't let them drive a car till 16.
Well, tattoos,
but they can make a permanent decision about their body when they're 5. That's
no, they can't, and that's the issue that I'm going to tell you about. You can be trans at any age, but transitioning happens at a different age. And my stance on when you're allowed to medically transition, that's a whole nother different thing about being trans, medically transitioning. We talked about this at the beginning. Is before puberty at the age of maybe 13 and 12. And again, you can't, I mean, you're imagining this as some a trans girl or a trans guy goes to a doctor and says, hey, look, I'm going to transition now and it's going to happen like that. And it isn't as easy as you think. It's very, very, very difficult and very hard to even transition at 18 or 19. And it's even more difficult to transition at 12 or 13. And the reason why it's so difficult is because psychologists do evaluate you extensively. And those kids who are diagnosed with being transgender at the age of 3 or 5 or something like that, they have been going to therapy for numerous years. And then when it comes to the time of hormone blockers, I think hormone blockers are a good thing because it allows the individual or person to not undergo, let's say, I don't know, for me in this case, it would have been male puberty. And then when it comes to estrogen and female hormones, that decision could be made at around 16, 17 and stuff like that. So that's where I see it. I definitely don't agree with giving 5-year-old children hormones or hormone blockers, because there's no point, because they're not going through puberty at the age of 5.
Okay.
It might suck. It might suck to hear that, and it might hurt, because you might still feel dysphoric about your body at the age of 5, 6, 7, or 8. But I just think that that's just my belief, that at the onset of puberty or that time, you're allowed to give a trans girl or guy hormone blockers if they've been diagnosed with being transgender, and that's just the way I see it. Yeah.
Okay. The problem with giving prepubescent kids or kids at the onset of puberty hormone blockers is there was a study that was just released that says it renders them infertile. So literally, you're robbing these people of the ability to have kids. Jazz Jennings, I'm assuming you've heard of her.
I've heard of Jazz Jennings,
okay, she's stuck with a prepubescent penis, meaning she'll never father a child.
Yeah, and that's the way hormones do work. And if you do them at any point,
isn't it at some point
look,
evil?
That's
to rob her of that right? To rob her of that?
Well, the thing is, trans kids who have been diagnosed with being transgender at a young age, it really does show. And there's been studies on that. I can give you the link to these studies if you want afterwards, after the Google Hangout. They have really been, I don't know, it really does show at a young age, and it's very, very clear to these doctors that do, I don't know, take care of them, I guess, that they are trans, and it really does hurt them when they look in the mirror every day, and it really does show. Like for me, when I started hormones, I started getting happier almost instantaneously, and it did change my life for the better, and it did improve my mental state. And that's where I'm just trying to say is that it would improve somebody's life, and that's the way I see it. And of course, there's the issue of, okay, look, you're gonna obviously not have kids, and it's a very difficult choice to make. But that's something
I'm
that
not gonna have kids.
Huh? Sorry?
Who says I'm not gonna have kids?
No, not you. Because hormones do change that for you, and doing estrogen, it does make you infertile, and that's a choice that you have.
That's the thing. We don't trust a 12-year-old to be left alone by himself overnight. Yet we're trusting him to make a decision that is going to affect him for the rest of his life, rendering him infertile.
Okay, look, but the thing is, okay, look, okay.
There's something wrong with that.
I'm not so sure how that works for trans guys, but
what it does is that they're testing.
Look, I think that hormone blockers at the age of 13 and 14 or 12 are really something that should be considered. And the thing is, it isn't like you're thinking that psychologists and doctors just automatically give you that paper for you to start that process. And there's a different process in Germany than compared to the United States. And it isn't just like one day you're going to say, hey, look, I'm trans, and tomorrow you get hormones. It took me maybe 3 years to get on hormones. And it's something where they really do have to medically evaluate you if you can actually go on them. And if they see that you're getting happier and it's improving your life and etc., I think that's a very good decision that you're making for yourself. And I mean, just look at Jazz Jennings. I think she's incredibly happy. And I'm not trying to deny the fact that there are people who have undergone SRS and hormone therapy and they're not happy. I'm not trying to deny that fact, but the majority does show that a lot of people who do start hormones, it does make them incredibly happier.
Well, I still say that rendering someone infertile before they even shave their legs
Mhm.
or their face is, well, quite frankly, evil. As for
Mhm.
Jazz Jennings, well, she ain't exactly the happiest in the world right now because she's running into another problem with reality, and that is boys. A lot of guys at her school don't want to date her.
Mhm.
Look, I followed the Jazz story for years and years and years, and I said there's something fucked up going on here, and I was proven correct. She is now, she's infertile. Her mom robbed her of, again, and also,
Look. But
here's
the way
here's the
I
thing.
chose this, is that when I thought about that decision of infertility and stuff like that, I knew that I don't know, having a child, and it is important, and it is I guess, a great feeling. But for me, I know that I would have been happier off taking the route of hormone therapy. And so far, I mean, I'm much happier, and it just,
You are,
and I
but a
know that,
lot
and I
of
know that,
but
and
a
I know
lot of
that,
them
and
aren't. And
I
what you're going
know
to
that
see,
I'm not trying to deny that there are a lot of people that who aren't happy, but it's just that for me, basically, I said, look, there's the option of adopting children. There's that option, and
it's not the same thing. And look, adopting
it
kids is
isn't the same
wonderful.
thing, but you're still taking care of a child. You're still parenting a child. It's still the same sort of thing that you're doing there. It isn't in
It's not. You're
biological
not a
terms
parent.
my child, but it is. And then there's the other issue of you can also freeze sperm. And a lot of people do this at the age of 15, 16 or whatnot. They do freeze their sperm, and if in future they would like a child or something like that, they can do that.
Well, like I said, I think there's something incredibly wrong with it. And I think you're going to see that 40% suicide rate climb. It's
Well,
going to
that isn't,
skyrocket
no. Well, the issue that
because
you're
their
going to bring up the
parents.
40% suicide rate because of the infertility. That's not the point. The reason why these
No,
trans
they have a
kids,
40%
and
suicide rate
I'm
because
not denying that.
gravity doesn't agree with them.
No,
That's why they have it. We can
sorry,
only
what did
do
you say?
so
You're kind of muffled.
uh they have a 40% suicide
Hmm.
rate because no matter what we do, no matter how hard we try, unless some new technology gets developed, we're
Uh-huh.
never going to make the transition.
No, that's
You're
where you're
toast.
seeing it differently. The suicide rate doesn't come from not being able to transition, or the transition going bad. The suicide rate comes from the people around them not accepting them, and that's where it really comes down to. If you look at studies, and I can send you those, where children who have accepting fathers, or teenagers, or people who are not teenagers, and they come out, um, the suicide rate automatically drops if you're in a social circle, or an environment where people do accept you. And if you're in an environment where people don't accept you, that suicide rate is honestly there because people don't accept trans people. That's why it's there.
Well, again,
Imagine
I hate
imagine
to
what
be
sort of
mean about this, but again, it's a bit of a delusion. We're
sorry.
never going to make you a. You're never going to be a. You can. We can only do so much, but at the end of the day, no trans woman is ever going to carry a child. No trans
Uh,
woman is ever going to have a
Okay,
period.
look. You're gonna say that women who can't give birth to children aren't real women.
But they have the equipment.
They're okay,
It
but
just doesn't work.
what you're trying to say is that women who can't give birth aren't
No,
real
what I'm
women.
saying is you're never going to
Then there's
transition.
women
It's all cosmetic.
who went into menopause, and they don't have their period anymore. Does that make them any less feminine? Does that make them any less? Does
No,
that deny them of their womanhood?
no, because no, they have the equipment, and
Hmm.
I'm not denying your womanhood. What I'm
Hmm.
saying is, though, it is masking.
What I'm
It's
saying,
cosmetic.
I'm not trying to say that I can birth children. That's not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm trying to say is that to say that you have to give birth to children to be able to identify as a female, that's just not correct.
No, I generally say if you have a vagina, but I'm saying the 40% comes from the fact where their world crashes because
No,
we
the
can only do
40%,
so much.
the 40% comes from growing up or being in
Then
a
why are
place.
gays so low? I mean, a lot
Sorry,
of gays have families that disown them, but they
being
don't blow
gay,
their heads off.
being gay and being transgender is a completely different thing.
I am aware of that, but if you're
Okay.
talking about why they kill themselves, and you're saying it's
Hmm.
because of a shitty family, well, a lot of gays have shitty families, and they
Yeah,
don't kill
and
themselves,
that does affect them, and
but
it
their
would affect
suicide
people.
rate isn't
For
that
me,
high.
that's okay.
Your
Well,
suicide rate is through the roof. Oh,
that's two
it
different
dwarfs
communities.
every
There's
other
two different
friggin'
communities
fucking
you're trying to
community.
compare. There's two different communities you're trying to compare right now, and honestly, for me, and I've looked at these studies where people say, "Hey, look, 40% or 50% are killing themselves because they can't transition, or their transition has gone wrong." It's totally not because of that. It's because of the field that they're surrounded by, the people that they're around. If your father or your mother or your aunt or your granddad or your brother doesn't accept you anymore, that does have some effects on your mental health.
So tell them
And
to
for
fuck off.
easy for you to say. I mean, I've definitely.
Really?
I mean, I'm very happy that I have a um a very accepting family, and I don't know, even my 90-year-old grandma who's been through World War II and stuff like that is accepting of my transition, and I'm very happy because of that, and it does give me an immense amount of joy, and I'm very grateful for that. But there's trans kids who grow up who are denied of that, and who are really sort of not allowed to transition, or not allowed
So
to
again,
be who they
tell
are.
them to fuck off. It's not
Okay,
hard.
let's say you're 13. Are you going to tell your parents to fuck off? Is that something you would do at the age of 13?
At 13, I came out to my rather religious grandmother as an atheist. So
That's
yeah,
two completely
yes, I
things,
would.
two completely different things. Again,
Oh, for Christ's
um,
sakes! When I was 4 years old, I wore a dress and nobody thought anything of it.
okay, but
Okay.
but wearing a dress and being transgender isn't the same thing. You can be a guy and you can wear a dress.
Well,
That
in these
that is
days, my parents might think I was transgender just because I wore a dress because Bugs Bunny did it.
okay. Cool. I don't know what to say to that story, but honestly,
Well, no,
it isn't very easy because your father and your mother and your family, in this case, or your family who doesn't accept you, does have a mental, or does have a tremendous impact on you, and I think you're not valuing what it is like to have a family that accepts you, because uh, it, your father, or your mother, or whatever is very important to you, no matter what you're trying to say. If I lost my father because I came out as trans, I don't know where I'd be. I'd probably be very, very, very depressed, because that's somebody very important to me in my life, and I don't want to lose them.
And again, gays, lesbians, bis, they all have
Mhm.
this. They all have this, and their thing is still about the same as everyone else's. Their
Because it's a
suicide rate.
completely different thing, though.
No, there's
There are
another
people.
reason.
There are parents. There are parents that agree with allowing your children to be lesbian, gay, or numerous sexualities. But there are
And there's a
parents.
lot of parents that don't. There's a lot of parents that
Okay,
disown them.
okay. But
There's
look.
another reason why your
There's people.
guys' suicide rate dwarfs
Because
everyone
we're because being transgender has nothing to do with being gay, and that's the whole
Could it
thing.
be that it's that at some point you have to accept reality?
Look, I'm not going to force somebody to accept uh, uh, transgender people. That
I'm not asking you
I'm
to
going to debate
accept
that.
them.
And
I'm asking the
the thing
trans
is,
people to accept reality. There's only so much we can
for me,
do.
you're not accepting reality right now.
How am I not?
What I'm trying to say here is that this high suicide rate that we're talking about the whole time does not come from your transition going badly, or I mean, that could be, I don't know, in the future a point, but most of these suicides come from kids or transgender people who don't have accepting surroundings, or who have parents and mothers and brothers who don't accept them, and that's where it comes from, essentially.
And I say gays, lesbians, bis have the exact same thing.
Yeah, but look, you can have a family that is accepting of gay people, and you can have, and at the same time not accepting of transgender people. It's a completely different thing. I have I don't know. I have some friends who are accepting of lesbians and gays and bisexuals and other sexualities, but they're not accepting of trans people. That's a completely different thing.
Wow. Like I said, I say there's another reason, and it has to do with reality.
Obviously, there's another reason, because being trans and being gay isn't the same thing, and that's where it comes from. And
there's a reason why why trans suicide rates are.
Of course, there's a reason why they're high.
And it has nothing to do with society. It has nothing to do with their families. If it did, you would see the same goddamn statistics.
Sure. Okay.
With gays and lesbians and bis.
Well, obviously, the whole this whole 40% suicide thing isn't good. You agree with that, right?
No, it's not.
Okay. And we want to obviously put that suicide rate down. And the way many people who are talking about the suicide rate think the way they think that we can put it down is by having more accepting people. And if the world does, or if the majority of the world does accept trans people, it might look a bit different. And it probably will.
And I am asking, we can accept you all we like, but you have to accept that you as a trans woman, you're going to have a hard time with a straight guy, because me and you have the same equipment. We can both pee standing up. And the fact that there's only so much we can do at the moment. I can't change XY chromosome to XX. That's impossible. One, again, maybe in the future we can do the full transition.
Okay. But the thing is, you're again referring to the XY chromosomes and your genitalia and whatnot, but still, it doesn't really have anything to do with gender. And there's people and trans friends who I know who don't have dysphoria and who aren't as dysphoric, and you've said again we talked about people who don't have the surgery, and there's people who are trans and they don't have dysphoria and aren't as, let's say, depressed or I don't know, depressed about their genitalia as other people might be.
Oh. I guess unless you've got anything more, we've sparred for about an hour here.
I don't really have anything more, but I would just like to, even we don't see eye to eye to a lot of things, I do think it's very important to talk about these things, because the only way that we're ever gonna understand each other is by talking about it. And I really want to thank you for having this Google Hangout or having this thing so that we can actually discuss all these things, because I think it's important.
No problem. And in fact, this is the first time me and you have agreed completely. This is the big problem that's going on in the world today, where nobody wants to discuss anything with an opposing viewpoint. I say one thing, you say the other, and then we just retreat to the. I don't want to retreat to the echo chamber. I don't need people patting me on the back, stroking my dick, saying what a great guy. No, I want to. If I'm wrong on something too, I'm the first guy to admit it.
Okay.
But I also look at everything with skepticism.
Sure. And I think that's really important, because a lot of people, when they're living their lives today, they're looking at news or sources of media where it affirms their point of view. And I think it's important to also, if you're liberal or if you're conservative or whatnot, to watch both sides of the argument. And I think that's really great that you've done this. That's all I want to say.
All right. Well, that wraps up this one, kiddos. Join me next week for another edition of Beer Chat, and I will see everyone next week.